We're living in a time where people break over things that previous generations pushed through without a second thought, right? Discomfort is now trauma, accountability is an attack, and anyone who disagrees becomes the villain in someone's story. And respect and discipline barely exist. Entitlement has become so normalized that basic emotional resilience is no longer common. And that's why everything triggers everybody. That's why people send hateful messages over opinions and advice or truth that challenges them. And I see it every single day. The anger, the projection, the outrage, and all it does is confirm how emotionally unprepared so many people are for the real world. And this is not strength, it's fragility. Real healing isn't coddling, it's uncomfortable, it's confrontational. It requires honesty and grit and the willingness to look inward, qualities that used to be the foundation of growing up. And until that comes back, we're going to keep seeing adults who crumble under the same weight their parents carried without a choice.
Get shit off! I have been having a very bad day. Just got out of jail this morning. Already I have been shot at. I was on the bus that flipped over 17 times. A bitch tried to stab me in the bathroom. And somebody blew up my Porsche. I am in a bad goddamn mood.
I said I'm never coming back again. Next I stepped away from the mirror. I got my mind made up now, 'cause I can see the future much clearer.
What's happening? L.A.R. movement still moving. What this lady is talking about is something I've been talking about and alluding to for a minute. So we're going to address it. You know, people are too fragile. And, you know, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. But as a kid, my parents, grandparents used to tell me and tell people, you know, in our age group, there's always somebody that got it worse. And what I see now is people think inconvenience is struggle. You know, people think being uncomfortable is struggle, and it's not. You know, people's trauma is not really trauma. And I get to this because, um, like, let me say this. A few years back, I got in a car wreck. Somebody totaled my car on the freeway. They just ran smack dead into me, right? And I had a friend in the car, and it was bad. It was a bad wreck, but I was able to. So I got in the car. I got in another car later. You know, it was like early in the morning, and I drove back home. And when I drove home, the friend was like, "How could you drive on the same freeway?" I'm like, "It's not a big deal." And it was like, you know, that'll mess me up. And I'm like, whatever. So what I'm finna say, I've had my throat cut accidentally. I've had guns put on me, cops, you know, whatever. I've been been around a lot of people who were shooting. I don't know, I think people say it's traumatic. Uh, you know, grew up in a pretty good childhood, but there was some, you know, you saw drug use and physical abuse and all that other stuff. Uh, where I'm from is a lot of gangs, not a big deal to me. You know, I think the first person that died when I was a kid, I was in the seventh grade. The guy was in the eighth grade. Seriously, um, of quote unquote gun violence. Um, Seen people shot. Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, I've had concussions. I've had broken bones, and you know, I skint. I think the left side of my face off when I was younger. Um, pretty much, only thing that I can't I didn't happen to me was you know, being touched as a child. But pretty much everything else been around it. Um, and I'm saying that as a person I'm 46, but what I'm saying ain't too off from the people that I grew up with and grew up around. Excuse me. Hold up. Sorry, I'm having a moment. So, you know, I've had the the issues when teachers didn't like the black students, the non-black teachers. I've had people trying to sabotage, adults trying to sabotage your life and stuff. I've had the you know um, bad experiences that will make you want to choke somebody. You know, I've had a parent try to ruin my college, like all kinds of stuff. But I say that to say, when the lady was talking about how um, the stuff that people go through now, that was just like a regular old Tuesday for us, you know, and we don't understand why you're so, you know, mentally messed up behind something, because there were things that people were really mentally messed up behind. Like, you gotta say that, hold that thought. Sorry about that. You gotta say that, I've known people who, you get robbed at gunpoint and the day goes on. You know, the love of your life gets killed, you know, and you got a best friends, it's the things that other generations had to make it through. It's like, what's the problem with y'all now? Like, my grandmother, um, one of my grandmother, she had 15 kids, if I'm not mistaken. See, the 15 or 18. Only four lived. And one of them lived until he was two and he died. So between my parent, my mother and her siblings, there you go. And I don't, and what I just said, it wasn't like it was um, that happened back in the day. That's how resilient people were. So that you say, like, you supposed to be here because after all of these kids passed away, didn't make it, these kids made it and they made y'all. You get what I'm saying? Excuse me. So, um, a lot of the things that people don't think about or think too much about. People say, I think too much, I overthink. And it's like, if you were busy doing, you didn't have time to overthink. That's the first thing. That's the first thing I will say. And for us, it's a lot of overthinking and a lot of underdoing. And we can't fit it. Doesn't we don't have the same mentality. And it's like, and people go, well, isn't that a problem? It's like, is it? Is it? Because for us, it's like, it's not an issue to be resilient. I'm not gonna let this stop. Like, if I'm trying to do something, I'm not gonna let these things stop me. Now, here's the other thing. Excuse me. Because there are people out here who play the game where, get over everything, and just because something happened, you need to pick yourself up. And it's like, hold up. Have you been through any of these things? And more, and I hate to say this, but more times than not, you have people who never been through anything that tell you to get over stuff. And a lot of times you don't get over stuff, you just get through stuff. That's the difference. That's the issue that she's talking about, that I'm seeing right now. Because a lot of people made the assumption that, in the past, people got over things, but they didn't get over them. They got through them. It still affected them, you know, but they just kept moving forward. And that's where the disconnect is, because they come to a point, it's like, why aren't you moving forward? You telling me this stopped you for life. This stopped you for a year. This stopped you for 5 years. This stopped you from 10 years. It's got to be real extreme to do that. You get what I'm saying? That was the difference with the generations in a sense. So I guess our perspective is a little bit different. You get what I'm saying? Um, sorry about that. Our perspective is a little bit different. We've seen people who got beat up and go to work. You know, they didn't allow us to have sick days. Our parents, like, I'm sick, you going to school. I'm hurt, you going to school. They taught us earlier, like, you can't, I need a day of mental health. No, we don't need all that. And then and people go, well, maybe you did. And it's like, not really. Because you got to learn how to deal with life and all your emotions. You know what I'm saying? Everything is not going to be ideal. And I think people are uncomfortable with the idea that everything is not going to be ideal. And there are other people who have a more ideal life who are comfortable telling people it don't have to be ideal, which is very hypocritical. And I say that to say, because I mean, we dealt with people like that when I was younger. And the interesting thing was, they really had a very low level of mental toughness. If you apply some pressure to them, they break real fast. So the people who have that idea, well, just do this and do that, apply some pressure to them. Watch how they fold. They're gonna fold real fast. It's gonna get ugly. Some of them, I don't know. They start crying. It gets childish. It's weird. But I say all that to say, that's part of the disconnect. Is the fact that we've had no choice but to get through these situations, and society now it gives you a choice to be stuck in, how can I be stuck in a frame of, I can't get over it, so I can't move forward. We were that to us, that's a luxury. Because if you can't get over it to the point where you can't go through it and go forward in life, somebody else is handling all the life things that's getting you through life, and that's burdensome. That is what we call being a burden on somebody. But you tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Peace.